Chosen one, when they walked away from you, they thought they were walking away from someone common. Not because you were, but because you hadn't yet revealed what was forming inside you. Your energy was still cocooned, still wrapped in layers of transformation. You hadn't stepped into your full radiance yet, and so they made the mistake of thinking you were just another page in their story. Forgettable, replaceable, something they could fold and tuck away. But you weren't a page. You were the beginning of the chapter they were never prepared to finish. They didn't know what you carried. They didn't feel the heat that would rise from the furnace of your becoming. They didn't see the light trembling in your silence. At the time, your power was quiet, still grounding itself. You were building from the inside out. You were reflecting, healing, recalibrating. And while they were busy looking for loud fireworks, you were birthing a solar flare. And now that the glow has found its rhythm inside you, now that your high sexual energy walks ahead of you like a living pulse, they feel the loss in places they never expected. Not just in the body, but in the soul. Your energy didn't die when they left. It awakened, and it didn't awaken to chase them or to prove anything. It simply began to shine in its natural rhythm. This energy you carry, it's not hunger, it's magnetism. It's not longing, it's attraction without intention. You don't beg for attention anymore. You don't offer it cheaply either. You've become the kind of presence that doesn't knock on doors. It stands still and lets the doors open on their own. That's what's making them restless now. That's what keeps them awake at night, heart pounding when they see your name light up their feed or drift through their memory. They didn't see your high sexual energy as sacred when they had it. They saw it as something easy to replace. But now, after tasting empty connections and trying to recreate what only you embodied, they realize what you offered wasn't lust. It was aliveness. You weren't just a partner. You were power in human form. You didn't offer them just chemistry. You offered them the chance to be seen by someone who vibrated at a level they weren't ready to match. They couldn't meet your energy then, and now they can't escape it. You never had to force them to see your worth. The truth is, they never stopped seeing it. They were just afraid of how small they felt beside it. And now that you're rising without noise, growing without their applause, glowing without their presence, they feel the cost of their departure every single time they hear your name, hear your laugh in someone else's, or see your eyes mirrored in someone new who carries your energy like a shadow. They didn't know what you carried, chosen one, but they know now. And regret isn't loud. It's slow. It sinks in like fog, like a song that gets stuck in your chest without permission. And that's what you've become to them now. Not a memory, but a melody they can't stop humming when the lights go out. Chosen one, your silence is no longer emptiness, it's echo. And it doesn't whisper. It rings. You didn't disappear when they left. You expanded. You entered rooms they didn't know you could reach. You touched souls they assumed you would never meet. And while they tried to erase the trace of you from their skin, you became a vibration in the walls of their world. Your absence is not a void, it's a presence with sharper edges. Because what once was warm and reachable has become sacred and untouchable. And every time they try to replace what you were with shallow conversation and counterfeit intimacy, they feel the difference like a sting. Because you weren't just someone they loved, you were someone who activated something divine inside them. And now that you're gone, that activation has nowhere to go but inward, spinning and haunting the chambers of their solitude. The echo of your high sexual energy isn't something they can drown out. It's not lust they miss. It's the aliveness they felt when they were around you. The way the air felt heavier with meaning. The way time slowed down. The way their body responded to your gaze. Not because you demanded attention, but because your presence didn't beg. It commanded. Your energy had a frequency that aligned everything in the room, a rhythm that brought stillness and spark at once. And now, even when they try to find new partners, even when they convince themselves they've moved on, something always feels off-key. Because your harmony can't be copied. It was specific. It was you. They didn't know it would haunt them. They didn't think the way you laughed, or the way you breathed, or the way your silence wrapped around them at night would become something they searched for in strangers. But now they're looking. and they're not finding it, because that frequency only lives in you. And when you left, you took it with you. Not to punish, but to protect. You no longer pour into what cannot hold you, and they no longer have access to what they didn't know how to treasure. The echo isn't cruel. It's clarifying. It's the sound of truth returning to the heart after the noise has faded. And that's what you've become in their life now. Not a missed opportunity, but a living reminder of what happens when someone chooses fear over alignment. They didn't just lose a lover. They lost a mirror of their higher self. They walked away from someone whose energy healed wounds they hadn't yet named. And now, when they feel that echo, it's not guilt they sit with. It's grief. Grief for a connection that only grows louder the further it gets from their grasp. That's why, chosen one, your exes are regretting everything. Because your energy is not a memory, it's a movement. And that movement continues without them, stronger, sharper, softer, wiser. They hear it now. Every time the world grows quiet, they feel it in their spine, in their chest, in their dreams. It's the sound of your greatness rising, and the quiet ache of knowing they had it once and let it slip through trembling hands. Chosen one, they never imagined that the version of you they left behind was only the prologue. They saw a draft and thought it was the final copy. They mistook your calm for weakness, your silence for confusion, your self-restraint for lack of direction. But what they didn't understand was that you were already building, quietly, deliberately, sacredly. They walked away during your root phase, before the bloom, before the blaze. They thought they were moving on from something average. They didn't realize they had abandoned something ascending. Time has a way of revealing what eyes were too impatient to see. They've had time now, time to sit with what they chose, time to look at where you were and where you are now. And nothing prepared them for the upgrade. Nothing warned them about how much you would grow, not just in stature, not just in opportunity, but in essence. Your energy has changed, sharpened, deepened. It no longer spreads in random directions. It moves with precision, with pull, with power. You're not glowing because you want to be noticed. You're glowing because your energy is finally aligned with your truth. And your sexual energy, the very essence they misunderstood, has now matured into something unstoppable. No longer reckless, no longer raw. It is contained, cultivated, refined like an ancient weapon buried for centuries, now drawn only when you choose, on your terms. And that self-control, that restraint, that measured fire, it terrifies them in ways they can't name. They see it when you walk into a room and don't chase validation. They feel it when your gaze lands but doesn't linger. You no longer reach, you no longer explain. You have become a presence that speaks for itself, and what it says is undeniable. You are not the same, not even close, and that realization is not gentle for them. It comes like a gust of cold wind, like a splash of ice to the heart. Because for the first time, they truly understand the value of what they had, and what they will never have again. The people they've entertained since you? Echoes, imitations, well-dressed distractions. No one moves the air like you. No one rearranges the energy of a space with a single glance like you. Your sexual energy doesn't announce itself with flash or drama. It simmers, it hums, it rests in your voice, in the casual confidence of your posture, in the way you answer questions without over-explaining. You are no longer trying to be enough. You simply are. And in that effortless wholeness, they feel the burn of everything they took for granted. You were never incomplete, you were becoming. And now that you've stepped fully into who you are, the upgrade is undeniable. It shows in your skin, in your stillness, in the way others orbit you. They see how people react to you now, the way strangers lean in, the way rooms go quiet when you speak. You've become magnetic without trying, desired without pleading, irresistible without effort. And your exes, watching from a distance, feel it in their bones, that cold, hollow ache of what if. But that question has no answer anymore. The door has closed, the river has changed its course, and you, chosen one, are already beyond their reach. Chosen one, energy leaves a mark far deeper than words ever can. The conversations may have ended, the messages may be deleted, the phone calls may have stopped, but your frequency, it still pulses inside them. Because when souls connect through authenticity, through truth, through that divine fusion of passion and alignment, they do not forget. And what they felt with you was not just chemistry, It was resonance. A meeting of currents that changed how they experience intimacy, desire, and self-awareness. You didn't love them casually. You loved them with the full presence of someone who had nothing to prove but everything to give. You touched them without always needing to touch them. You entered their spirit through silence, through stillness, through the kind of presence that doesn't fade when the body leaves. And now, long after they've tried to move on, they are still attuned to the space you once filled. They find pieces of you in shadows, in music, in the way someone says a certain word. And it's not memory they're haunted by, it's energy, alive, stubborn, persistent. You never had to try to leave a mark, you just had to be yourself. Because the frequency you carry, the sexual energy fused with spiritual power, direction, and restraint, is not something they've encountered again. You didn't seduce with desperation, you invited with calm. And that calm is louder now in their silence than it ever was in your presence. It disrupts their new relationships, creates comparisons they pretend not to make. They laugh, but it doesn't hit the same. They're kissed, but it doesn't spark. They're touched, but it doesn't awaken. Because you weren't just a person, they now know you were a portal. And walking away from you didn't just end a relationship, it ended their access to a dimension of love and intimacy they never knew could exist. They might not say your name. Pride rarely permits that. But inside them, they're still scanning the world for signs of your return. Not because they believe you'll come back, but because they're hoping to find something that feels even close. But that's the problem. What you offered wasn't just rare, it was unique. No GPS leads back to your vibration. No detour recreates your frequency. You're not waiting where they left you. You've moved on, chosen one. You've upgraded in energy, in direction, in purpose. But they're still stuck in the emotional timestamp of your departure. They can't recalibrate, because once you've tasted connection that's sacred, you can't pretend surface-level desire satisfies you. And their soul knows that. It weeps for it, craves it, and resents the fact that it's gone. That's why, no matter what they try to build now, it feels hollow. Because the architecture was designed for someone like you. You were the blueprint they didn't know they needed. And now they can't forget the shape of your energy, no matter how hard they try. They feel you still, not as a ghost but as a benchmark, a reminder of who they were becoming when they were with you, a mirror of the person they were scared to grow into. You didn't abandon them, they abandoned their own expansion. And now their soul is paying the price. Because your frequency wasn't a phase. It was a wake-up call, and every time they lay in bed staring at the ceiling or find themselves silent after a shallow laugh, they feel it again, the pull, the echo, the regret. They'll never be able to name it publicly, but they know, deep down, they know. Their soul still recognizes your frequency, and it hurts, because nothing else resonates like you. Chosen one, there's a difference between someone who leaves a mark and someone who leaves a legacy. You didn't just cross their path. You altered it. You didn't just show them love, you revealed love in a form so pure and disruptive that it reshaped how they saw themselves. And now, long after you've walked away, you've become the story they cannot tell. Because to tell it would mean admitting they lost something sacred, something rare, something that only exists once in a lifetime. They don't speak your name, not because they've forgotten, but because it stings. It isn't that they've erased you. It's that remembering you in public would unravel the carefully constructed narrative they've wrapped around their pride. You became the lesson they learned too late, the chapter that won't close, no matter how many new pages they turn. You're in the spaces between their sentences, the way their eyes hesitate when asked about past loves. You're not a secret. They just don't have the courage to describe what it felt like to lose you. Your sexual energy, the divine pulse of life that moved through you, wasn't about possession or control. It was about elevation. When you touched them, you touched something far beyond skin. You stirred the spirit. You didn't make them feel wanted. You made them feel witnessed. You stripped away their masks without demanding they take them off. And now that you're gone, no one sees them like you did. No one reaches those inner places with a wordless glance. Others may try, but your imprint remains, the way you made their world feel like a temple, even in silence. They don't bring you up during casual conversations. They don't mention the nights when your presence made the air itself feel alive. But it lives inside them, in the way they hesitate before committing again, in the way they sometimes withdraw without explanation. Because the memory of you isn't just emotional, it's energetic. It sits in their nervous system, it dances in their dreams, and no matter how many filters they apply to the photos of their current life, they cannot Photoshop away the ache that says, "I had something and I let it go." You didn't just love them. You offered them a mirror of their higher self. You reflected their light back to them at a time when they were still doubting they had any. That kind of love isn't easy to forget. It's not even possible, because you didn't meet them where they were. You met them where they could be. And in doing so, you forced them to confront the fact that they weren't ready for what they asked for. They thought they wanted deep love. They thought they were prepared for someone with high sexual energy fused with purpose, direction, and integrity. But you showed them what that truly meant, and it scared them. So now they keep the story of you to themselves, not because it's small, but because it's too big, too holy to speak lightly of, too raw to share without trembling. And while they pretend to be fine, the truth is they measure every new connection against what they felt with you. And nothing ever matches. Not because you were perfect, but because you were true. And truth leaves a scar when it's lost. They carry that scar. Quietly, always. Chosen one, when they left, they thought you would stall. They expected you to shrink, to wallow, to unravel. They believed your value was linked to your proximity to them. But they didn't understand that you were never orbiting them. You were orbiting your destiny. And the breakup wasn't your undoing, it was your unleashing. The moment they stepped away, life began pouring into you all the things they were too afraid to nurture. You didn't fall, you rose, you became sharper, more grounded, more luminous. Your sexual energy, once misunderstood or taken for granted, became refined. You channeled it into your purpose. You redirected it from longing into alignment. It's no longer a current you drown in, it's a river you command, and that command is irresistible. Not because you crave attention, but because you no longer need it. Your very aura now speaks a language of fulfillment, and that kind of presence can't be ignored. They watch now, quietly, from the shadows, from burner accounts, from friends' phones, from anonymous scrolls late at night. They see the glow in your skin, the peace in your eyes, the stride in your steps. You don't move like someone healing from heartbreak anymore. You move like someone who found gold where others saw rubble. Your pain became power. Your silence became signal, and every post, every word, every laugh that reaches them now sounds like a door closing forever. You didn't become better to spite them. You became better because it was time. Because the version of you they left behind was never meant to be your final form. You grew into your body. You expanded your mind. You allowed your soul to exhale. And now your energy radiates like a lighthouse in a storm. It calls to others who are ready, not to play games, but to meet you in the truth of your vibration. That's why your exes regret it now. Not just because they lost you, but because someone else will now benefit from the evolved version of what they mishandled. It's not about revenge, it's about revelation. They see now that what they had was not average, that your sexual energy wasn't just physical allure. It was life force. It was divine magnetism fused with direction, maturity, and clarity. You weren't just a lover, you were a mirror, a gateway, a catalyst. And they let it go before they understood its value. You're not bitter. You're beyond. You don't need closure. You became it. You don't seek validation. You embody it. Your presence now turns heads not because of ego, but because of elevation. And those who once looked down on you are now craning their necks just to catch a glimpse of your light. But you don't look back. Not because you're angry, but because you're home within yourself. That is what makes your evolution so irresistible. You are no longer rising to prove anything. You are rising because gravity has no hold on those who remember their power. You remembered. You returned. You reclaimed yourself. And now the world, especially those who thought you were finished, must watch as you become everything they could not contain. Chosen one, there are certain flavors in life that imprint themselves so deeply, no amount of time or distance can dilute them. You were one of them. Not a fleeting indulgence, not a temporary high, but a rare and unforgettable taste. The kind that settles on the soul more than the tongue. The kind that ruins mediocrity. The kind that makes every substitute feel like a lie. And now, in the silence that follows your absence, they're beginning to understand the weight of that. They didn't just lose a relationship, they lost ambrosia. You offered a presence so potent, a love so alive, that it lingered far beyond the moments you shared. Your sexual energy, misunderstood by some as physical lust, was far more than that. It was an alchemical force, transforming tension into electricity, gaze into communion, silence into heat. When you touched them, you didn't just touch their body. You awakened a dimension in them they didn't even know existed. That's why nothing tastes right now. That's why no one else feels complete. Because what you gave wasn't an experience, it was a revelation. They've tried, you must know that. They've reached for new hands, laid beside new bodies, entertained new distractions. But it all fades too quickly. It all slips through the fingers. The intimacy feels staged. The laughter feels borrowed. The desire feels muted. Because they weren't addicted to your attention. They were addicted to the aliveness they felt in your presence. You didn't just make them feel seen. You made them feel woken up, as if their soul had remembered its own fire. You weren't performing. You weren't acting out someone else's fantasy. You were simply being. And in that raw being, you created an atmosphere of truth they can't replicate with anyone else. There were no games, no masks, no manipulations, just your essence, fully unfiltered. And that essence, it tasted like liberation. It tasted like home. It tasted like the version of themselves they always wanted to believe existed. Finally touched, finally invited, finally known. They didn't understand it then. They assumed they could find better. They mistook your spiritual intimacy for emotional vulnerability, your sexual magnetism for charm. They thought what they were feeling was common. But now they know. Because every encounter since you has left them more hollow, more jaded, more convinced that something irreplaceable slipped through their hands. They chase echoes. They chase shadows. But you were not a shadow, you were sunlight. And sunlight doesn't leave crumbs, it leaves contrast. Now they live with that contrast. The realization that there's a before you and an after you. The before was comfort, routine, control. The after is a hollow ache that nothing fills, not even distraction. Because your taste wasn't in the skin, it was in the spirit. And the spirit remembers. It remembers everything. The way you looked at them without needing words. The way your energy curled around them without touching. The way you let them fall apart without judgment. That kind of experience is unforgiving. It does not leave quietly. You became the reference point for authenticity. And now, everything else feels like fiction. That's why they keep checking your profile. That's why their heart races when someone mentions you in passing. That's why they look away when your name shows up in conversations. You are still in their mouth, chosen one. Not as a taste of the past, but as the proof that some things once tasted ruin you for anything less. Chosen one, perhaps the most devastating part of letting you go is not just what they lost, but what they can no longer predict. When you were theirs, they thought they had time. Time to figure themselves out. Time to test the waters. Time to circle back when they were ready. But you weren't a holding pattern. You were a movement. And now that they're no longer part of your story, you've become a mystery that haunts them with every step you take beyond their reach. Your energy used to orbit them in quiet loyalty. But once you withdrew it, something shifted. You didn't just disappear, you evolved. And your evolution hasn't stopped. You continue to rise, not in arrogance, but in alignment. You've become unpredictable, untouchable, unreadable. They can no longer anticipate your next move, and that terrifies them more than losing your love. Because you were once their comfort. Now you are their unknown. They hear whispers of your growth, feel tremors of your presence even through the digital veil. A new picture here, a moment of joy there, the glimpse of a smile not meant for them. It doesn't matter how much time has passed. What disturbs them is that you're becoming more beautiful, more magnetic, more yourself without them. Your energy is maturing like fine wine, richer, rarer, more intoxicating. And they can't stand not knowing who gets to sip from the cup they threw away. You no longer explain your silence. You don't owe them updates. You don't orbit regret, And that independence has made you dangerous. Not because you're vindictive, but because you've transcended attachment to their opinion. You are walking in your power now, fully clothed in mystery, moving through the world with the kind of quiet confidence that needs no audience. And it drives them mad. They're surrounded by predictable people now. People who answer texts right away. People who share too much, post too often, chase too eagerly. But you've vanished into your purpose. And in your absence, you've become a myth, a legend, a what-if with a pulse. The farther you drift, the more powerful your pull becomes. Because now you're not just the one that got away, you're the one who keeps going, and no one can follow. And still, they watch. Even if they never admit it, even if they never say a word. They track your movement like a celestial body in the night sky, distant but undeniable. They feel the shift every time you grow in silence. Every time you make a choice without them. Every time you light up someone else's world. You've become a mystery not because you vanished, but because you became, and you did so in full view. They never expected you to evolve without them. They thought they'd always have a piece of your light. But now, your light shines where they can't stand. And your mystery, the ever-growing distance between who you were and who you are, has become the silence they scream into every time they remember what they walked away from. You are no longer someone they understand. You are someone they marvel at. You are no longer their familiar comfort. You are now the unknown horizon. And in that horizon, you hold every version of yourself that they will never touch again. That is why your mystery torments them. Not because they don't know who you are now, but because they never really knew you at all. Chosen one, the most deafening sound in a world of shallow noise is the silence of someone rising without you. That's what they're hearing now. Not your words, not your pleas, not your presence, but the silent roar of your evolution echoing through everything they touch. It's in their idle thoughts. It's in the way people mention you in passing. It's in the glow of your eyes on a screen they shouldn't be staring at. And most of all, it's in the absence, the wide, aching space where your energy once lived freely, now replaced by a void no one else can fill. You're winning, but not with vengeance, not with loud declarations, not with spite. You're winning in a way that feels inevitable. You're not chasing validation, you've become it. You're not fighting for acknowledgement. You are the standard now. And the people who thought they could discard you like a phase are being forced to witness your unfolding like a sunrise they can't look away from. They feel it in their chest when you laugh again, especially when it's not with them. They feel it in their stomach when they see how others are drawn to you, not just because you're attractive, but because you carry a weightless confidence they never helped you build. They feel it in their skin when they lie next to someone new, and their body remains unmoved. Because with you, intimacy was more than touch. It was presence. It was truth. It was electricity wrapped in stillness. And now, they're haunted by how loudly your silence continues to speak. You didn't become better to prove them wrong. You became better because you stopped trying to convince people who couldn't hold the depth of your being. You stopped giving your sacred energy to those who treated it like a passing breeze instead of the divine wind that it is. And now that you've stopped pouring into cups that couldn't hold you, your reservoir has turned inward. It has grown, it has deepened, and its overflow has become the foundation of your glow. Your high sexual energy, once misunderstood or misused by others, is now your language of power. It pulses from your smile, it anchors your voice, it magnetizes the room before you speak. It is no longer something you offer recklessly, it is something you guard, something you cultivate, something you command. And that mastery is why they can no longer approach you the same. You are not bitter, you are transformed, and they feel the gap widening with every breath. It's not just your joy they regret, it's your peace. The way you no longer react, the way you no longer seek closure, the way you no longer explain your worth. You've become untouchable, not because you're hiding, but because your light no longer flickers. It burns, it guides, and it scorches anything that tries to dim it again. They feel this, they see this, and it creates a war inside them they will never confess. Because to admit that you've become more without them is to admit that their presence was never necessary for your rising. You were the star they underestimated. the storm they couldn't contain, the garden they walked away from before the bloom. And now that your life blossoms in full color, they're stuck watching from the sidelines, cheering with clenched teeth, wishing they had stayed long enough to taste this version of your becoming. Chosen one, you are no longer just a person in someone's past. You are a standard in their future. You're the bar they don't talk about, the silent comparison, the unseen shadow stretching behind every new connection they attempt to hold. Your energy was not fleeting. It was foundational. It was the kind of presence that doesn't fade with time. It intensifies with distance. And now, as they move through life, pretending to forget you, they are constantly reminded of what can never be replicated.